Okay, Mr. Genetti, we're ready for you. Would you go ahead and call the time one more time so we have it on the record?
Okay, roll call, please.
Could you call the time for me one more time so we have it in the record? I think you said 6:02 earlier. Okay, I'm going to do roll call. Can everyone hear me okay? Councilmember Martinez?
Here.
Councilmember Carroll? Chair Baron Genetti?
Here.
Vice Chair Richard Beneke? Is he on here at all? I show he's connected. Member Bill Bengesa?
Here.
Member Steve Cooley? Mr. Cooley, I show you're connected. Member Frank Parks? Mr. Parks, I show you're muted. I show that Mr. Parks is connected but muted at the moment. Chairman, you can move on to the next item.
Okay. We'll do the Pledge of Allegiance if everybody would follow the Pledge of Allegiance at this time. I pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, are there any requests for excused absences? Any adjustments to the agenda?
No adjustments.
I don't hear anything. Any conflict of interest or disclaimers? Okay, just to clarify, since we're doing this and I can't see you raising hands like when we do Zoom, you can see somebody when they have a question or want to make a comment. When we have issues tonight, I will go around and ask everybody by name if they have a comment. I got a list of who's here, so as opposed to everybody trying to butt in on the thing, it'll just be easier if I just ask individuals if they have a comment and we can move along. This is the public comment period for items not on the agenda. Due to the circumstances, we are encouraging members of the public to maintain participation in our meetings by submitting any public comments via email. The email address will be displayed on the screen and will go directly to our Deputy City Clerk. Are there any requests, Nicole?
I have 0 requests.
Thank you. Action item, public hearings and requests. Item number 1, approval of the minutes from our last meeting. Are there any requests to speak from the public?
No, sir.
Okay. Do we have any comments from the group? I'll start with you, Richard. Do you have any comments about the minute meetings from our previous meeting?
No, and I'd move to approve those minutes.
Okay, let me just ask everybody else if they have any comments. Steve, do you have any comments about the minutes? I don't hear anything. Mr. Benghazi, do you have any comments on the minutes?
No comment.
Mr. Parks, do you have any comments? Okay. Julio, do you have anything on the minutes?
No comment. No comment.
Okay. I have a motion to approve the minutes from the meeting. Do I have a second?
Yes, second the motion.
Okay, second to motion. We will have a roll call vote for this. Nicole, would you please take the vote?
Yes. Mr. Parks, if you can hear us, if you hit *6, you can unmute your phone. I don't see him unmuted yet. Give me just a minute. Let me see if we can do it manually on this side so I can get his roll call vote.
This is Parks, aye.
Okay. All right. I'll start with roll call then. Mr. Parks?
Yes, aye. Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Cooley?
Yes.
Mr. Bengesa?
Hello?
Mr. Bengesa, your vote on approving the minutes?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Beneke?
Yes.
Mr. Martinez?
Yes.
And Chair Janetti?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 2, formal approval to modify the recurring meeting date of the Finance and Audit Committee to the second Monday of the month. Are there any public comments?
No, sir.
Okay. Nicole, you have a report for us on that?
Yes, I just have a short staff report. Staff has requested that the Finance and Audit Committee meeting consider the adjustment to the reoccurring meeting date from the first Monday of the month to the second Monday of the month. This motion will ratify a previous consensus to do so. So the recommended action is to modify the reoccurring meeting date of the Finance and Audit Committee to be the second Monday of the month.
Okay, so we've been requested to move the board, our meeting from the first Monday to the in-between the two council meetings, like we're doing tonight. Discussion, Mr. Beneke?
Yes, I know it's on the agenda, and I believe the correct action would be to make a motion to approve it. I know it was discussed prematurely, I guess, last time, wasn't really on the agenda. So I would so move if that's appropriate to approve this action, the recommendation.
Okay. Mr. Cooley, do you have any comments?
No comments.
Mr. Benghazi, any comments?
No. No comments.
Mr. Parks?
No comments.
Okay. Julio, any comments?
No comments, and I'll second the motion.
Thank you. We've had a first and a second on that. Could we have a roll call vote? Nicole, please.
Yes. Mr. Parks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooley?
Yes.
Mr. Bengesa?
Yes.
Mr. Beneke?
Yes.
Mr. Martinez?
Yes.
And Mr. Janetti?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 3 is the fiscal year 2020 general fund and wastewater fund update through March 2020. We have a staff report from Jeff.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. So we've done this a few times since I've been here, where we've provided kind of an update where we are with regard to both the general fund and our wastewater fund, which is, as you know, are our two largest operating funds. And so this recent update, which has already been to council because we missed a meeting in April, and so this has been already seen by council and approved. Or received, but we wanted to bring it back to Finance Committee since we missed a meeting. And so what this has is it has your information through March of this year, which is 9 months into the fiscal year. And I apologize in advance. I know I told you I was going to do a different methodology that was going to show some additional accruals. I will be showing you that at the last agenda item when we talked about the budget. So. And been kind of busy with budget stuff and a whole lot of things. So bear with me. I haven't made that modification into this schedule yet, but I will. So I'm going to take you through the general fund, if you can open up that attachment, and I'll walk you through where we are. Overall, our tax revenues are, we're trending really good in property tax. I expect we will exceed budget at the end of the year. The good news is that the property taxes are not going to be impacted by the COVID-19. Sales tax is another matter. While we're trending quite well right now, we do expect that this last quarter of the year, beginning, mid-March, and through the remainder of this fiscal year, is going to be a significant decline. How much we don't know. It's a little bit hard to say. But as I'll express to you when we get to the talking about the next budget, we are expecting a reduction and to be below budget in this item. The other taxes, which you see there, the biggest piece of that, really, literally 2/3, 3/4 of that, is the motor vehicle in lieu. That tends to ride with property tax. What happened is instead of giving us that motor vehicle in lieu, they give us essentially a section of the property tax, and this was done several years ago in the state. But it runs hand in hand with property tax, and when property taxes drop off, this drops off, and likewise when they go up, this goes up. Business licenses, we are expecting those to drop off from the budget. I think we'll be very close to whether we hit budget. I think we'll be a bit under probably. When you get to the permitting activity, which is really our development-related activity, we are seeing those declines from prior years. In fairness, I think the new equilibrium or the equilibrium for the city, it is something closer to $3 million or so in that range for this type of revenue. As you can see, we had some pretty good revenues in prior years, and we won't hit those marks. But those were because we had some fairly large projects, either significant amount of housing development in the residential, or in the case of 2019, we had Amazon that came through, which is over $1 million by itself. So in any event, we're trending below budget, and I think we will land below budget. As we move forward and look at charges for services, again, I think we are going to hit near our budget. Now, if you look at prior years, you'll see that the biggest piece of that was sanitations, was solid waste. That has now been a contracted out service. What you see in there for this fiscal year is just some residual collections that were held over from prior years as a bit of an accrual timing standpoint. They didn't get booked in to the prior year. And then if I go forward, looking at investment earnings, well, as you can see, we're a little bit above that. Other income, we didn't really budget anything specifically for cost recovery, but we're doing quite well compared to prior years. Cost recovery, by the way, is when we get paid for services that we provide. An example of that is in the school district, where we have an officer that we provide to assist with the school district, and they pay the salary of that officer for that period of time. So that's an example. We have a few others that like that. At the end of it, midway down here, a little bit further midway down, you can see we're trending at about 62% of the revenues, 3/4 of the way through the year. Now, while that normally would be a little startling because you'd say, well, we should be about 75%, remember it's not linear. If you look back up above to your taxes, which are a big piece of it, we have a big collection that we get in the last quarter of the year on both sales tax and property tax. Sales tax, we expect that to not be as big this year, but property tax we do. Likewise, if you look at our transfers, we're expecting over $6 million in overall net transfers in. This is that category 90, if you will. And as you can see that we haven't made all those transfers yet. We've only made some small transfers for our gas tax. We have the full CFD transfer still to make, and we'll be making that in the next quarter. So overall, you'll see when I get to the end, we are trending pretty close on our revenues. I expect us to be not too far off of our budgetary target. Moving down below on personnel services, you can see we're trending slightly below budget on the personnel services at about 71%. So we expect a little bit of savings there. We typically have, in the range of 2 to 4% of savings in this particular area, where we don't spend quite all our money. It's due to vacancies. It's due to some estimations of benefits that may be a little bit high. But I do expect that we'll have some savings there, probably in the neighborhood of $1 million or more in the personnel savings area. Operating, we're also trending quite well, but I would point out that in your contractual services, which as you can see, we're trending quite low. Part of that is because we only have 2 of our fire services contract quarters in. So we're only halfway through the year on that expenditure. That's a big piece of it. That's about $1 million a quarter. And so while I don't think we're going to get all the way up to 100% of budget, I do think we'll be under budget and have some savings in this area as well. Bottom line is, if you go all the way down, these numbers are a little hard to read. I am going to improve these reports, and I apologize again for that. Just didn't have the time this time around. But if you go down to my overall analysis, you'll see that I project that we will be anywhere from as a low of $5.7 million surplus to as high as $6.7 million. I do expect that the biggest piece of that is because of the $5 million one-time fund that we got related to solid waste. Without that, we would be fairly close to budget. To be honest with you, we'd be probably less than $1 million surplus to a little less than $2 million in surplus. Those numbers, as you recall, when I was giving them to you back in March with January numbers, we were looking at those numbers thinking they would be a good $1 million to $1.5 million higher than this. The biggest thing that's declined is we think sales tax is going to come in probably $1 million under what we initially projected. And then we're also seeing some drop in transient occupancy tax, business license, where you think development revenues have dropped off even a little bit more from where they were. And so as a result, the good news is there's surplus. Bad news is that surplus has narrowed quite a bit. And I'll stop there and answer any questions.
Nicole, is there any requests from the public?
No, sir.
Okay. I'll open it up for discussion. Again, I'll go in the order that I was. Richard, do you have any comments or questions?
Well, I think in lieu of what's happening and everything like this, it's almost predictable that some of these budget categories will start to reflect the current environment that we're in, and hopefully we can have somewhat of an idea a little bit earlier as we craft the city and the council and everybody crafts their budget for next year, so that we're in a position to hopefully offset what we perceive to be some very possibly shortfalls. So anyway, that's just a general comment, but overall, I'm glad to see where we're at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. And I think we'll see the comment you made at the last part of our agenda should address that issue. Okay, Steve, do you have any comments, questions?
No comments, no questions.
Okay, Mr. Benghazi?
No comment, no question.
Okay, Frank? Thank you. Frank?
No comments.
Okay. Mr. Martinez?
Yeah, just real quickly, Jeff, I was going to ask this at the meeting and I didn't get around to it. On the sewer fund, wastewater fund, when we have a possible deficit for the unplanned expenses, I'm concerned because, of course, we're finding a lot of wear in our system, pumps and pipes and so forth. Can you remind me, you were talking about an assessment or some sort of a survey that we were planning to do so that we can kind of pinpoint where our needs might be so we can plan accordingly. Can you just remind me on what that was about?
Sure. And as you know, Christine's the expert, so as far as really getting into details about the bricks and mortar needs, I will defer to her, and she's going to be coming to a finance committee meeting in the near future. But yeah, generally speaking, there are two major things going on. One is an overall master plan that they have been working on, as you're aware. And that will take into account operating needs. It'll be a fairly far-reaching looking at the bricks and mortar as well as operational integrity and operational efficiencies, those types of things. But then there's a second piece that we talked a little bit about at the council meeting, and that is we will also be looking at doing a new rate study. And that's built into your CIP expenditures. The rate study itself, that's built, I think we're going to do that in 2022, I believe is what the plan is. So that will be looking at your just strict financials on whether we're bringing in the right number of revenues to support the budget. But when you get into talking about the bricks and mortar, that's more your master plan and then which will lead into CIP development in the future.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You bet.
Okay.
That's all, Chairman.
I don't have any questions on that, Jeff. Are you going to go over the wastewater fund now?
Yeah, brief. I'll try and go a little quicker. Wastewater, I won't spend as much time on that, but I did pull that one up. So if you've got that handy, we'll walk through it real quick. The good news is when I get to this, you'll find out that actually we're seeing some improving trends in the wastewater, which at this point in time I was expecting some larger deficits, and I was a little worried about 2021. Right now, that's looking a little bit better. Now we don't know what's going to happen with housing and vacancies and things like that, and foreclosures. So that I'm getting a little ahead of myself. But let's talk about this schedule first. Your revenues are tracking fairly close to budget. As you can see on here, you have one major revenue line item, and everything else is pretty much dust. But that's your wastewater. That's the fees that everybody pays for sewer fees. And that's tracking at about 68% of budget. Now, 4 of 6 payments have been recorded, so essentially 2/3. So as you can see, we're tracking very close to that. I expect us to, pretty much be pretty close to hitting our budget mark. There may be some delinquencies that we have that might be a little bit beyond what we expect in this last quarter. And so that's the only thing that might deteriorate some of those numbers a bit. But otherwise, we're tracking fairly close to budget. On the expenditure side, both on personnel and on operating, we're tracking below budget. I would note that on the personnel side, we are correcting some previous issues with regard to allocation of salaries. So you'll see that number bump up a bit. We had some salaries that were budgeted entirely in the Public Works Division. That some of those belonged in wastewater. So you're going to see a little bit of a kick up. So you won't see quite this trend line of this much savings, but you will see some savings built into that. You're seeing some operating cost savings, but what really hurts this budget, if you will, is what council member was just referring to, and that is down below. You'll see we have other, which is $500,000. I'm going to relabel these and fix these, but what that is a contingency line item. And that contingency line item is used for these capital expenditures that have been coming up that were unexpected. Recently at the council meeting, I took 2 items forward for their retroactive approval that were for some of our lift stations where the pumps had gone bad or were in danger of going bad. And then we just recently, I'm actually in the next week, I'll be taking some to the council, which is essentially a $300,000 repair of some of our line systems that were sagging and in danger of breaking due to a lot not being reinforced and supported properly. That was a fairly big project. Bottom line is we expect to expend out the vast majority of that $500,000. This is the reason you have a projected deficit in this budget, is because of these capital expenditures. It is a little difficult to know when those capital expenditures are going to go away and these uncertainties are going to be a thing of the past. I would expect that fiscal year 21, you'll still see some of this. And we have built into that budget a contingency, which about a $300,000 contingency into that budget. My hope is that as we mature, as we get that master plan together, that it may be that there's not a need for that big a contingency going forward. But certainly at this point in time, it was needed. In fact, we increased from $300,000 to $500,000 this year. Bottom line with this is we are expecting that we had a budgetary deficit, you can see at the bottom, of about 600,000. But I don't think we'll be anywhere near that much. I think because of the savings you've seen and because we're looking like we're going to hit our revenue target, I expect your budget deficit to be closer between $100,000 and $200,000. The good news is the proprietary funds, we can do this. And we have enough unspent or unallocated reserves that this would dive into a piece of that reserve. The reserve is probably in the neighborhood of $6.5 million. So we have a good solid reserve for this. Anyhow, that's what I have for wastewater.
Okay.
Happy to
Still
answer any questions.
nobody public comment. I kind of jumped the gun on that because we had two parts. Nicole?
No, sir.
Okay. Any comments, questions? Richard?
Yeah, I'm on your operating on the wastewater operating costs. You said that your note said there was going to be higher expenses expected in the last quarter. I'm wondering what's that in reference to? You talked about capital improvements. I'm assuming your operating are different than that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. There's a few items in here where our contractual services, they were a little bit behind on allocating some of those dollars and spending some of those dollars. So I expect that'll come up quite a bit. I don't think it'll get anywhere near the $1.1 million budget, but I do think it's going to come up quite a bit from where it's at now. You'll see in the admin overhead, which is just below that line item, that there's only been $325,000 allocated. At 3/4 of the way through the year, we should have another allocation in there. So that's under allocated at this point. That full $650 will be allocated. What that represents is the wastewater fund support, or it's the payment to the general fund for the administrative support that the general fund provides. All the admin overhead, personnel costs, IT, things of that nature. There's an allocation from this fund to the general fund, and that's what that $650,000 represents. And we haven't allocated the third quarter yet. That'll be rectified shortly. Then other than that, those are the two major items where I think we're behind in our expenditures that we'll be doing some catch up.
Oh, okay, a question, Jeff. On these allocation or redirect on the allocations of resources in terms of paying for costs that the city incurs by doing administrative support, I guess you'd call it, to the wastewater treatment plant. Is this fairly new? Is this kind of a new thing that you guys are doing?
No, they've been doing it for a while. You can see back the last 2 fiscal years that they had allocations at this point in time. I don't know when it was originated. It's fairly standard in city government to have this type of allocation from a proprietary fund over to a general fund because there's a lot of overhead that's done to support the various activities of the fund. But I don't know historically how far back it goes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's a little bit unusual. I mean, it's not unusual, but there's always the opportunity there to, charge a little more than what you should be charging. But this is all auditable, so I'm sure it'll fall within the standards for reimbursement purposes.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I mean, one of the things that we need to do and will be doing this summer is looking at our cost allocation strategy, not only for this but for grants and for a variety of other things. And so I'll be going back to look at the cost allocation strategy because your point's a valid one.
Thank you.
Okay. Steve?
No comments.
Mr. Benghazi?
No comment.
Mr. Parks?
No comment.
Councilman Martinez?
Yeah, real quickly, Jeff, sorry I jumped the gun. I was reading
That's
out
all
my
right.
notes. Hey, just real quickly, I know we've been trying to move a lot of the contractual services in-house. Are there any positions that we're still trying to fill? as a part of plant ops?
Yes, we are. We had a position that we were going to hold vacant, but it was the city manager informed me that it was a critical position. So we are actually going to fill a vacant position here.
Oh, okay.
I think they're either in the process doing it now or they will be shortly.
Okay. So I remember hearing something about that. I just wanted a kind of a bit of an update. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. That's all, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. I believe I need a motion. It is recommended that the Finance and Audit Committee receive this updated financial schedule. I need to have a motion for that.
I'll make the motion. This is Steve Cooley.
Steve, do I have a second?
I second the motion.
Okay, Mr. Mingazi. Roll call vote, please, Nicole.
Mr. Parks? Mr. Parks?
Aye.
Mr. Cooley?
Yes.
Mr. Benguesa?
Aye.
Mr. Beneke?
Yes.
Mr. Martinez?
Yes.
Mr. Genetti?
Yes. Okay, item number 4, independent auditor selection. Boy, Jeff, we're going to keep you busy tonight. Staff report, please.
Sure. Happy to do it. Actually, this is one of the things that's gone as smooth as I'd hoped for in this. In the middle of COVID-19, we were able to get an RFP out. Lisa, thank you for all that work. Lisa was the heavy lifter on this. And then we were able to get meetings together with Mr. Cooley and Chair to basically pull together what's before you today. And we had 3 bids that came in. The existing or the auditor we have now, which is the Poon Group. And then we had 2 others that came in, Rogers, Anderson, Malady, and Scott, which we use the term Rams. It's a lot easier. And then Edie and Payne, which we just use Edie and Payne because that's easy. Bottom line is we went out with the RFP on the March the 6th, and we had to extend it out. Initially, we were going to have those come in early part of April. We ended up extending it out a couple of weeks because of the COVID-19 situation. But we did get in 3 bids. They were all solid bids, in my opinion. I'll let the other committee members speak to it more directly. I'll let them have more time on this one. But just get right to it. We are recommending that the Finance Committee recommend to the City Council that we move to Rams, to negotiate a contract with Rams as our next independent auditor. And the items that I've expressed in here as to why were because, quite honestly, while they were all 3 good proposals, and I was impressed with the other group that we interviewed, which was Edie and Payne. We interviewed the top 2 finalists. I think as a committee, believed that Rams had a little more direct experience with city government, and it's a bigger part of their business model. They have a lot of cities that are similar size to us, and that they specialize in that kind of business. And then they demonstrated and were able to express to us during their interview the ability to deal with some of the specific issues that our city needs to have focus on, and that is we have quite a bit of development activity, and we have the community financing districts and things of that nature. Excuse me. And then at the end of it, Rams also came in with the lowest price, and so there was a lot of reasons. But I'm going to now defer to my other committee members to maybe put in their 2 cents on this particular issue. So I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Steve, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I just want to point out that what we were particularly impressed with is not only is the Rams doing the current audit work we're looking for with other cities, is that their staff was members of the regulatory agencies that handled the development funds. They're also directly involved in that training, not only giving it, but taking it. They were exactly matching up on what we needed, versus the others were just doing general CPA training to meet the requirements. Ram's group was doing all of their training in exactly the fields that we think they need to have in order to do an acceptable job for us. Added to the fact that they're local, and their comment was is the money that they make comes into our economy. It stays right here in the general geographic area. That was impressive to me too, as opposed to all the staff members living somewhere outside of the area, and in some cases even outside the state. So I think it's important that we support our local areas as well. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Steve. My comments are pretty simple here. I mean, the people that we interviewed, the three that responded, are all very qualified people. The one issue that I was concerned about, because I heard it from the council for my over a year here, is to get this thing in on time. And I felt very assured by Rams that they were going to be able to deliver this by the end of the year so that we could report out to the council the audit findings in January. You know, pending us. It would be the city that could change that, but they have such a good process, and I thought that was very important for us to maintain our transparency as a city, is getting that audit done in a timely fashion. The other interesting point is 4 of us working independently at different locations unanimously came to the same conclusion that this was the choice that we liked for all the reasons that you've heard. So we'd like to, is there any public comment? Nicole?
No, sir.
Okay. Anybody would like to have any comment now? Richard, questions?
No questions, but I'm very, 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 very familiar with Rams. I've dealt with them in the past, and I believe you guys made a very excellent choice.
Good to hear. Mr. Benghazi, any question or comment?
No comment.
Okay. Mr. Parks?
Yeah, I would say that the committee did a heck of a job, quite frankly, with the RFP, et cetera. And I'm very comfortable with the proposal.
Okay. Councilman Martinez?
I just want to say thank you to Steve and Barron. This is exactly what council was looking for, is having an independent makeup type committee with a citizen review and the actual city treasurer involved. So thank you for that, and I think this is going to give a lot of confidence to the public. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. I need a motion to make this recommendation.
So move.
That's Mr. Beneke?
Yes.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Benghazi. Nicole, a roll call vote, please.
Member Parks?
Aye.
Member Cooley?
Yes.
Member Bengesa? Mr. Bengesa?
Yeah, yes.
Member Beneke?
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez?
Yes.
And Chairman Janetti?
Yes. Okay, moving to item number 5 on the agenda, the 2020-2021 budget preparation status. Staff report, none other than Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The staff report that I prepared is just a holding place. Really, what I'm going to walk you through is the staff report, which is your attachment A, that went to City Council. And the bottom line here is we've been working on the budget for I'd say about 3 months. We started in February. We had some early meetings. At that point in time, we had a plan to be building in enhancements, and we had a whole process for how we were going to manage that. And we were looking at cost of living adjustments and things of that nature. And And then COVID-19 hit and things started to change. We had a meeting in March where we said, wow, we don't know what's going on here, but we think things are changing. And then we had another meeting in April, as you can see referenced here on this document. And by that time we knew things were changing pretty dramatically. And we knew that it was going to be prudent for the city to move forward with looking at reducing our budget on the expense side of the equation. And then by May 5th, which is when we had the meeting with council that this report provides, it was pretty clear that the city was heading for a deficit spending situation if we didn't make some adjustments. And so the reason, while the city has really good, robust reserves, the city's well managed and has done a really good job of building up solid financial reserves. City manager talked to council, and we've talked quite a bit, and we do not know the depth and breadth of this particular economic downturn. It's unlike what any of us have seen in the how quick it hit, how hard it hit, and we don't know how long it's going to last. And so, but we do know that unemployment, which in this state is hovering just under 25%, is at significantly high levels. And it's very possible, if not likely, that we're going to see a recession that lasts well beyond the end of this year and possibly through next calendar year in some form or another. So I think it's very important that the city take stock of its reserves and not use them all at once, because as you saw in the last document, if property tax, while sales tax can drop off 20-25% and the city gets hurt, the city doesn't get devastated. If property tax drops off 15-20% in addition to that, then we're talking about some significant challenges for the city, and those reserves could be used up rather quickly. Anyhow, long story short, we are projecting a $2.6 million shortfall in the next fiscal year. But we have also managed to work through the budget reductions that will allow us to make it a balanced budget without diving into those reserves at this point in time, saving those reserves for if the other shoe drops. So at this point in time, you have about $1.6 million in personnel cost savings. That's the biggest piece of that is holding positions vacant. Another piece is holding wages flat. And then the other piece is to essentially do some budget adjustments. The other two pieces of that are really budgetary adjustments, not true cost savings. We have built in quite a bit of I'm going to call it for what it is, excess budget fluff into the health part of the budget. What we were doing is basically budgeting people at the highest level of possible expenditure. So if somebody came in that was a single person, that position had been budgeted at full family cost of medical. What we've done is we trued that up. So we brought that down to more what people are receiving is what we pay for. There's a risk in that if you fill a position with somebody who requires more health care, you now don't have the budget for it. So there was some prudence in saying, let's budget a little high. So what we did is we took a 10% play in that. So you can see in your document that we brought it to actual costs plus 10%. Bottom line is it's a $1.6 million savings through your personnel adjustments. Operating adjustments are at about 6.5% reduction from the initial budget, and that totals a little bit over $900,000. While that doesn't maybe sound extremely high, in many cases it's much larger than that. It's 10, 12, 13, or more than 15% in some budgets. So it wasn't done linearly. It wasn't just an across the board, everybody cuts this amount. We really looked at those areas where we could do it in-house, and in those cases we tried to do so. We also had some areas where, quite honestly, the costs are coming in higher. A great example of that is in our insurance costs, which went up by about $150,000 this year. So that in some of these costs we're just not able to fully control them. At the end of the day, both those together give us the necessary savings to balance the budget. On the wastewater side, and I'll walk you through the schedules real quickly, but on the wastewater side, we're projecting some increased revenues. So the wastewater budget, the way it's built is it's built on the sewer rate fee, and it's due to have a 5% increase the next fiscal year. So that will go up. Our revenues would grow commensurately. Plus, we are seeing some growth in housing, even though it's slowing down. We're still seeing some growth in housing, and as you can see, from the development activity that continues here in the city. We're going to have some additional commercial development that is going to add to our wastewater rates. And so we've increased our revenue expectation to from 10.2 to 10.8 million. With that, and we've also done some budget cuts there as well. We've cut both on the personnel side and on the operating side. Not nearly significantly. It's more of a trim up. But in that case, whereas we were initially projecting to have to pull money in from the development impact fees to support debt service to the tune of $700,000, we've reduced that down to about $280,000. Really positive news, because that means the wastewater fund is nearly supporting itself, and it needs to do so in order to obviously be its own fund. As we mentioned, we have good reserves, but we do have a balanced budget for this. I'll quickly take you through the schedules. If you look at your attachment B, which is your general fund summary, I mentioned earlier that we had done some analysis of estimated results, and here's where you'll find that. So has everybody got that? Then what you have here is the main schedule we took to City Council, and you have your actuals for 2017 and 18. You have your budget for 19-20, which is the year we're currently in. Your estimated results, where this is, I think, what Mr. Parks was kind of looking for, is kind of an extrapolation of where we think things are going. And as you can see on that column, we are projecting to be over in our property tax, over the budget, and even over historical actuals. Sales tax is where we are seeing a haircut. We're projecting that's going to come in under 4.9 million. Whereas we were, just under 5.6 million last year. And then you can see the rest of those projections going forward. At the end of it, basically, if you eliminate that 5 million on the taxes, if you eliminate that one-time franchise fee, you've essentially got a flat budget on the tax rate, okay? Property tax is going up, sales tax is coming down, and you can see where we're at. So on this schedule, because most of you haven't seen it, City Council got to see it two or three times. On this schedule, we have the proposed budget reductions in there, and you can see where those kick in. And you can see that we're continuing to tinker with some of our other areas, such as some of our tax revenues and things of that nature. Bottom line is you've got I forecasted of about $33.3 million in total revenues. If you look back to where that budget is, you kind of, if you do some adjustments, because you've got that $750,000 in there that wasn't in before, change the way we're handling that accounting. And if you look at you kind of extrapolate out some of the other numbers, it's essentially a flat budget. We're basically budgeting very flat compared to where we were budgeting for 19-20. So the bottom line here is on the revenue side is we are expecting some decreases. This, I wouldn't say is a pessimistic budget, but I wouldn't say it's optimistic either. Right now, it's our best estimate. You don't see an impact on property tax right now because the monies that coming in for the next fiscal year, they've already done the roll on that. They've already done the appraisal. The appraised value's already been set before COVID-19 kicked in. So you don't see that impacting property taxes in this next fiscal year. But I've adjusted my long-term forecast for 22 and beyond, and we do have some projected deficits, decreases, I should say, in property tax and associated motor vehicle in lieu. If I go down to expenses real quickly, you can see that line, that column that has all the negatives, that's our budget reductions. The budget, the line to the far right is the current proposed budget for City Council. The one that's two over basically was the budget they first saw back in April. In May, we proposed these adjustments that are all in the negatives. And you can see it totaling about $2.5 million, or $2.7 million overall in adjustments. And then we have about $33.3 million, same amount, with a balanced budget. Your expenditures similarly are trending fairly close to prior year levels, to your 19-20 budget. So while we've done cuts, if you will, mostly what we've done is taken out any growth. And as I mentioned, there's some things that grow that we can't control. There's PERS costs, which is our pension. There's insurance costs. There's other things, workers' comp. There's things like that grow despite our efforts to contain. And so the fact that we've been able to balance the budget is without having to cut much beyond our prior year budget is, I think, fairly pleasing. And with that, I'll stop and be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Nicole, is there any public comment?
No, sir.
Okay. Comments, questions? Mr. Beneke?
I have no questions at this time. Will we, as a committee, have a look-see at any kind of draft budget?
I'm sorry. What do you mean for before it gets approved?
Yeah, I don't know if it's one of our charges or not to look at any kind of draft budget.
I have not been advised that that's a role of the Finance and Audit Committee, but I would have to check because I'm not certain about that. Okay. I have not been advised that I needed to bring it to Finance Committee prior to council adoption.
Okay, so this is basically the only update or look-see or opportunity for us to really have any kind of comment regarding any kind of budget for next year.
Yeah, unless I misunderstand the role, I have not been advised that this has been being brought forward as an informational item, but I can double check to see if there's any approval authority.
No, I'm not.
Nicole, do you know?
Not off the top of my head, do I know? I don't believe it's in the policy.
I can verify that, but I've not been informed that was part of the process.
Okay. I'm not asking that we do it if it's not part of what we should be doing. I do just want to make a comment. I think you're being very proactive in this situation, which is a very fluid, moving situation. And I think the forbearance and prudence that we take and the measures we take now will position us in the future to survive this whole thing. So thank you, Jeff.
Yeah,
you're welcome.
Yeah, I have one comment, Richard and Jeff. I believe what you're proposed, just reviewed with us, is what you're going to go before council with for the budget, right?
Almost. There'll be a handful of adjustments that we're working on now that we will, when we bring it to council, the current plan is to bring it to council on June 2nd. There's a handful of adjustments altogether. They're fairly small. We'll be calling that out for council's attention, but that's our intention, yes.
Without every detail there, this is the overall budget for 2020-21 that's being proposed, Richard.
That's what I gathered, yes.
Yeah, okay. Steve, questions, comments?
The only comment is that we've handled this in the same way in prior years. This is the only input that we've had. We've had an opportunity to look at it before it went to the council, but the council has asked for our input on it. And that's it. No other comments.
Okay, Mr. Benghazi?
No comment.
Thank you. Mr. Parks?
No comment.
Okay. Councilman Martinez?
No further comment.
Okay. I'm good here. I need a motion. Or do I need it? Is there an action required here, Nicole?
No action required for this item. It was just informational.
Okay, so we really don't need a motion?
No, sir.
Okay. The next item on here is subcommittee updates. Other than the RFP process, which Steve and I were involved with on this, searching for an audit company, has anybody else had anything? I know, Richard, you were working on that one item. Is there any progress on that, or have we just been on hold basically because of the situation?
We've been on COVID-19 hold.
Okay. And I think that's about it. I don't know if anybody else on the committee, if there's any other things. I can't think of anything else that's been going on. Steve? Yeah, we were trying to do some audit and inspections over at the headquarters, but we're not going over there right now because we're not going over there. Okay, future agenda items? Anybody have any agenda items they'd like to see covered?
Barry?
Yes.
This is Richard. We had at our last meeting 2 months ago an item that we deferred to our next meeting, fraud training audit, and I just want to make sure that I don't know when we'll be able to get to that, but I want to make sure it doesn't get lost in the crack somewhere down the road.
Yeah, that's something Steve and I were working on, and I think we're just on hold right now. We're aware of it. Steve, right?
That is correct.
Oh, okay. That's fine.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you for reminding us. Yeah, we're there. It's just a tough situation. Meeting review.
Mr. Chair?
Treasurer. Yes?
Mr. Chair, as far as future items, this is Jeff Molenkamp again. Just want to let you know there's 3 items that we are going to be ready to bring to the Finance Committee, either next meeting or the following meeting, so either June or July. And that is the ACH policy. So we've got that drafted, and that'll be coming to you. Like I said, either be June or July. I'm targeting June for that. We are also targeting on bringing an update to the Finance Committee on our grants. So there's been a compilation of all of our grant data, so that will be available to you. And then the council had requested an overview of the wastewater fund, or the Finance Committee, pardon me, had requested an overview of the wastewater fund, and our assistant city manager will be coming to do that too. So just let me know when you'd like to schedule those items. They are going to be all available to you in the near future.
Well, I think when you're ready for them, let's put them on. Let's let Nicole know that we can do them.
Okay, very good.
If you got dates now, if you could do it for the next meeting, 1, 2, or 3 of these items, go for it.
Okay, very good. I'll work with Nicole, and you'll see all 3 of those items in the next 2 months.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. My comments from tonight's meeting is I'm looking at this year's budget, and with all the revisions and the circumstances around COVID that has hit us in this last quarter, that our budget is going to come in with a surplus, and that was benefited by the $5 million that we got with the waste management company. But at least we're keeping our head above water. We also will be reporting up about the process that we did with the RFP. It was, as Councilman Martinez said, this was a high interest area that the committee get involved in these various things, especially the RFP. and I'll review that process that we used here from the start of building the RFP up until the interviews and the recommendation that we approved tonight. And that's what I have right now, and obviously subcommittee reports, which I try to give each time. We have nothing to update because our hands are kind of tied. Jeff, do you have any final closing comments?
No, I just want to express my thanks to Lisa once again for all the hard work that she did on that selection of the new auditor. She really did a lot of work on that, both preparing the RFP, but all the way through the process. So I want to thank Lisa for that.
Yeah, I'd be remiss to not mention that also. She was really great and has a lot of insights. In fact, she has had enough experience with these companies out there that she had some good insights for us who maybe have less contact with those. Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
Okay.
It's my pleasure.
Well, with that, I thank everybody for bearing with this. It's a little more difficult doing a teleconference, but it really worked well. I appreciate your participation and comments in here. And we'll see you next month on the second Monday of the month. And I move that we adjourn at 7:07.
Second.
Thank you, everybody.
Stay safe.
Thank you.